Alright, in this video we will be practicing evaluating trig functions without using a calculator. Now I'm betting that each of these will have a reference angle that is a special angle. The special angles are 45 degrees, 30 degrees, 60 degrees, and 90 degrees. In radians, that is pi over 4, pi over 6, pi over 3, and pi over 2. Okay, so reference angles. Well, technically, these are not reference angles, but they are still easy to find without using a calculator. So watch out for these angles to show up as we're doing the problems. Now, I mentioned this on many other videos, but I guess I need to mention it again. Memorization. Alright, see these three yellow trig functions? These values, you have to memorize these three values. Just flat out memorize them. On a previous video, I showed where they came from. So you can go back and watch that video. But for now, memorize these three yellow values, because you can get all the other values from these. Okay, so for example, if you know these three yellow values, well, guess what? The cosine of pi over 4 is the same thing, so you got that too. If you write down these two yellow values, all right, the sine and cosine of pi over 6, well, guess what? The sine and cosine of pi over 3 are the same thing, just reversed. So you just switch them, and then you have those. Alright, so the moral of the story is memorize these three trig functions right now. I mean it, this second. And make sure you understand that pi over 6 is the same thing as 30 degrees, and pi over 3 is the same thing as 60 degrees. Alright, and so on. So if 30 degrees comes up, you need to know that sine of 30 degrees is 1/2, and the cosine of 30 degrees is radical 3 over 2. Alright, and the sine of 45 degrees, which is what this is 1 over radical 2. Alright, that needs to also be automatic. So what do we have? What do we have right here? Let's draw our unit circle and see what's what. So here's our unit circle. So here we go. Alright, unit circle, radius of 1. It's awesome. So standard position is like this, 240 degrees. You understand how this works, people. Alright, that's 90, 180 right there. If I went to here, that would be 270. That would be too far, so I'm not going to go there. Instead, I'm going to end up somewhere in this quadrant. Alright, the third quadrant. Okay, so that's my angle. To evaluate this without a calculator, I'm just going to look at the reference angle. Okay, I'll call that R. Now, right here I am at 240. Okay, on my way by I passed 180. Okay, so the reference angle is 240 minus 180 because it's between those two. Alright, you do not need a calculator for this, but just in case you need the visual. Okay, that is 60 degrees. Alright, I told you it was going to be one of the ones that we have memorized. Alright, oh yeah, by the way, these like 6 values that are right here, let me zoom out. You need to write them down on a piece of scratch paper as soon as you start a quiz, the first, or a test, or your homework for that matter. The first thing you should do is take out a sheet of scratch paper, and you write down the 3 that you memorized, and then write down these white ones, and then you just refer back to them for the rest of the assignment. Okay, so that's what I'm doing right now. So we just found that the reference angle was 60 degrees. Okay, so the sine of 240 is going to be the same thing as the sine of 60 degrees, except that it might need to be negative. So remember, on the unit circle, every point is of the form cosine, comma, sine. Okay, so cosine is the x value, sine is the y value. So what about this quadrant where the 240 is? Alright, we're doing sine. Is sine positive or negative right here? Well, sine and cosine are both negative in this quadrant. So sine is definitely negative, so we'll need to put a negative on that. Okay, a negative ghostwriter. So anyway, sine of 60 degrees, okay, that's right here. Alright, this is our 60 degrees. Sine of 60 degrees is radical 3 over 2. Okay, so that means we have negative radical 3 over 2. And that's the answer. Alright, we did it without a calculator. Tangent of 150 degrees. Let's go. Rock and roll. Okay, let's draw our unit circle. Let's see what's what. Alright, so this is the positive x-axis where we begin. Alright, well, right there, that's 90 degrees. If I went to there, that would be 180. That's already too far, so let me not do that. So that tells me I need to stop somewhere in the second quadrant. Okay, like that. Well, guys, so this is 150 degrees. You know the reference angle is right here, all right, against the x-axis. So if I had went a little bit further, that would have been 180 degrees. All right, so what's my reference angle? All right, this reference angle then is 30 degrees. Okay, so the reference angle is 30 degrees. It's the difference between 180 and 150. So that tells me that the tangent of 150 degrees is going to be the same thing as the reference angle, tangent of 30 degrees, except maybe it needs a negative sign on it. Alright, maybe, just maybe it needs a negative sign. So we'll come back and worry about that later. Okay, let's talk about sine and cosine though. That's how we'll know. Because tangent is sine over cosine. You know this, all right? Tangent is sine over cosine. So that would be sine of 30 degrees over cosine of 30 degrees. All right, now let's worry about whether or not this should need a negative sign on it or not. In this quadrant, okay, again, keeping in mind that every point on the unit circle, like x, y, is of the form cosine, comma, sine. All right, in other words, the x value is cosine, the y value is sine. So, are these positive or negative in the second quadrant? Well, in this quadrant, the cosine is negative because it's to the left. So cosine will be negative. So I'll just go ahead and put it right here. That cosine is going to be negative. Sine is positive because of the way it's up. So it's like negative, positive. So the sine is positive, the cosine is negative. Alright, so a positive divided by a negative is a negative. So that tells me that I'm going to need a negative on my answer in the end. I might need the space, so I'm just going to erase that. Okay, back to business. Sine of 30 degrees is one of those things that we memorized. Alright, sine of 30 degrees is 1/2. Okay, or if you have not, 30 degrees, same thing as pi over 6. If you have not memorized the three things shown here in yellow, then that's why you're lost. So you need to stop and memorize these three things right now. Right now. Pause the video. Go memorize. I'll wait. Okay. Cosine of 30 degrees, we also memorize. That's our radical 3 over 2. Okay, so that one's positive, that one's negative. Anyway, when you divide, see how the denominators are the same? They're going to end up canceling out. So really, it's just going to be the numerator divided by the numerator. All right, the 2's are going to cancel out. So that's why the final answer is going to be negative 1 over radical 3. Okay, that's the final answer. All right, number 11, secant of negative 315 degrees. This is one of those reciprocal trig functions. So let's start off by finding the reciprocal. Secant is the reciprocal of the cosine function. So let's start off by finding the cosine of negative 315 degrees. And then whatever we get from this, we'll do the reciprocal of it. So here we go. Okay, positive x-axis. Negative 315 degrees, right? Negative, you're going clockwise. Okay, so here I go. So that's negative 90, 180, 270. If I went all the way, that would be 360. All right, that would be too far. All right, so I'm going to stop somewhere here in the first quadrant. Okay, so I'm doing like that. Now, what just happened? What happened? All right, so this was negative 315. Okay, if I had kept going, I would have gotten all the way to negative 360. All right, so what's the difference between these two? Because this is my reference angle that I need. Okay, my reference angle, I can just do 360 minus 15. Guess what that is? Oh, look, 45 degrees, one of our special angles. Okay, so that means that the cosine of negative 315 degrees is going to be the same thing as the cosine of the reference angle, 45 degrees. Except maybe it needs a negative sign on it. I don't know, does it? Well, cosine on the unit circle is the x value. In this quadrant, the x value is positive. So I don't need to put a negative on it. I can just find the cosine of 45. And actually, I've memorized that because look, that's one of my values that I wrote down at the beginning. I memorized that the sine is 45 degrees, which is what this is 1 over radical 2. And then that the cosine is the same thing, so 1 over radical 2. Okay, so that means that the secant, which is the reciprocal of all this, will be just radical 2. Alright, because the reciprocal of 1 over radical 2 is radical 2. And that is going to be the final answer for number 11. Okay, how many did I just do? 3 problems. How many are there total? Alright, I'm coming up on 15 minutes. That's a good place to stop for this video. Alright, we're just going to continue practicing. So on the next video, we'll just do some more of these. I'll see you on the next video. Between now and the next video, make sure you've memorized these three values. Haha.